One of the most important questions about retirement planning is pretty basic and also kind of ignored, at least when you're designing your plan. That most important question is how much you'll spend in retirement. We've talked about this in the past. I've got a video on here about different ways to figure out how much you'll spend, and I've got a link to an article about it in the description below. But there's a really crucial nuance to that question that gets even more overlooked. How will that spending change throughout your retirement? A lot of retirement plans assume that we'll monotonically spend the same amount every year over the course of our retirement. But this pretty obviously isn't the case, even after accounting for inflation. We're not the same at 65 as we are at 75 or 85 or 95 or any other age. We change through time, and our spending will naturally change with that. And our retirement plans should account for that. Everyone's different, but there's a really common pattern that we can see when we look at how people spend over the course of their retirement. Most people have what's called a retirement spending smile, which David Blanchett described all the way back in 2014. The basic idea is that when you first retire, you're still young and active, and now you have a lot more time to do all of the stuff you put off while you were working. And this is the idea of time affluence that Dan Vito talks about in one of his workshops in our membership site, the Retirement Researcher Academy. But the big idea is that most people tend to spend a lot, whatever that means in your case, when they first retire. And then they eventually slow down a little bit as they get older, and they don't spend quite as much. And then, as they get older and get towards the end of their life, their expenses pick up again because of healthcare costs. This isn't a universal pattern, especially that uptick at the end, but it is pretty darn common. And it's a good mental model for thinking about how your spending might look out into the future. Here's a pretty simple example. We've got the straight blue line representing a constant inflation-adjusted spending plan of $100,000 per year, just to make the math easy. But again, no one is going to be that robotic. You might start with that $100,000 spending, or maybe treat yourself and bump it up a little bit, but most people will see that dip, like what we've got here. How far that dip goes will depend on you and your situation. But this is actually a pretty average path. In fact, this chart is based on Blanchett's findings. And I've got the link in the description. But he found that on average, our spending bottoms out when we're 84 with about a 26% drop in real spending. And again, this makes complete intuitive sense. Most of us have a lot that we want to do when we retire. We've got all of those trips planned, and we want to basically go out and do stuff and enjoy our freedom, which usually means going out and spending. And as we start aging, we don't necessarily want to go out and do quite as much stuff. So we tend to spend less money. So far, so good. But let's think about that uptick towards the end of our life. As I mentioned earlier, that's an increased healthcare expenses. In fact, our discretionary spending continues to decrease throughout the rest of our life. Aside from George H.W. Bush, there aren't too many 90-year-olds going out and skydiving. So we actually have a situation more like this, where we have a decreasing non-healthcare spending, but an increasing amount of healthcare spending. And a crucial point here, above and beyond making predictions, especially about the future, being hard, is that everything about that healthcare line is wildly up in the air. We don't really know when that line will really start to pick up, or how much healthcare spending we'll need to do, or really any of that. There are a lot of people who are incredibly healthy throughout their retirement, and then pass quickly before they even really have the chance to spend much on healthcare. My mother-in-law was like this. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who have a pretty high baseline of healthcare spending, and then everything in between. Trying to figure this out is a little bit of an impossible task. You can look at your current health, your family history, and that can give you a good baseline. But it's also worth considering, just like when we're thinking about how long of a retirement we should plan for, which is just a nice way of asking how long we're going to live for, that medical care is advancing. We aren't just thinking about what doctors can do right now. We're also thinking out about 20 or 30 years into the future. Just think about all the stuff we can do now that we couldn't back in the 90s. And it's going to keep getting better out into the future. So where does that leave us in terms of retirement planning? Well, the big upshot is that you can't just expect a constant spending pattern. Or rather, assuming a constant spending pattern will likely mean that you could have spent more early on in retirement, when you would have likely enjoyed that spending more, and you're overspending later on in retirement, when you likely aren't going to be enjoying that spending quite as much. Using a retirement spending smile also means that you can use a little bit higher initial distribution rate from your portfolio, if you want, because of that lower spending in the future. It's the same thing as when you're thinking about a fixed versus variable spending approach. The flexibility means that you can spend more on the front end of your retirement, again, if you want, with the understanding that you might need to reduce your future spending. We're just building that reduction into the plan. If you're looking to understand how to put your own retirement plan together, including teasing out how to tell how much you value spending early on in retirement versus later in retirement, a great way to do that is by taking the RISA. The RISA will help you understand your personal retirement income style and what that means not only for how you structure your investment portfolio, but the whole of your retirement income plan. And even better, you can take the RISA for free with Retirement Researcher. Just go to retirementresearcher.com/free RISA, all one word, and sign up to take it. The test only takes about 15 to 20 minutes to complete and will give you the information that you need to really customize your retirement plan to you. If this was helpful, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel so you can see what we're up to. If you have any questions on this or any other questions that you'd like me to address, just drop them in the comments below. You can also check us out on the web at retirementresearcher.com and make sure to sign up for our weekly newsletter to keep up to date with everything that we've got going on.